This was our last night of camping, and it means a couple things. It means we're headed home. We'll be home later today. But it means if you've read my book, Go, which is a trip planning book, then you know this is the part in the trip where we start to think about what worked, what didn't work, what could work better. And so that's what we're doing with the van at this point. Things that we're so far really excited about. Eloise, after 3 weeks, learned to sleep in her crate. We are so excited that she finally learned to sleep in her crate. She never slept in the crate that I built in the last van. So for me, this is a personal victory. But that's a really good thing that we're super excited about. There are other things that we're super excited about, but here are some things that we need to work on in the van or change up in the van. Okay, so the first thing that we're changing is we're going to move away from these types of propane cylinders and go to a bigger one. Not a full size, but something a little bit bigger than that that's refillable. And we didn't really know what we were going to need, so we brought a lot of stuff and didn't use a lot of it. So another thing that has to change is I think that this drawer is going to get dividers in it. I love how big it is, but things do kind of get lost in it. So I think we're going to do a little rejigger on this one, as they say. These are getting cabinet faces that will open up. This was obviously, well, maybe not obviously, this was just temporary. The table we absolutely love. I've got to take the corners off and smooth out these edges. I'm gonna router these down, which I've never worked with a router before, so it should be interesting. We are super happy with the covers that I just made like the day before we left. They Velcro in, they work really well. They stop a lot of heat loss. They also add a measure of privacy. We use the curtains a whole lot less now that we've got these simple Reflectix covers. I of course have to insulate the doors, and these all need to be covered, and I've got a good plan for what's going to go up there. I need to buy a Rivnut tool to make these mounts a little bit easier to deal with, or these holes a little bit easier to deal with. And the same for the back doors. A couple little tweaks with wood and such in the back of the van, and so in general we're happy with the van. But that's not to say that there aren't quirks. This whole trip was a test for van life and the systems that we were using and can the dogs do it and stuff. And one of the things we were toying with doing was, in the last van we used a Yeti cooler, which worked fine for us. But we were toying, we bought another Yeti for this one because we sold the van with the old Yeti cooler. We were toying with upgrading to a refrigerator, so a Dometic or something like that. And so there are two problems with doing that. First, the Goal Zero unit we have can run a Dometic refrigerator in terms of power, but I think only for about 10 hours, and that's with nothing else running. If I run the fan all night, I'm at about 80% of remaining battery power. So that's a little too close for comfort, because if we were to run the refrigerator all night and the fan and then get up in the morning and it's overcast, we wouldn't be able to recharge our batteries. We could, of course, plug into the vehicle and charge that way, but in any case, to upgrade to a Dometic cooler and upgrade our battery bank to support it would cost about $2,000. Our entire build was only about $7,000, so that's a lot of money. So for now, we're going to continue to use the Yeti cooler. We were actually using a 2-cooler system with a smaller cooler. So that's quirk number 1. Quirk number 2 is this under the bench storage. It just needs to be organized a little bit better. We need to keep all the dog food under here, and just only have stuff in here that we really need. We didn't really use it in the beginning of our trip, and it sort of just ended up becoming a crap collector. Then there are some quirks with the van itself. So it's a 2019 with 85,000 miles on it. You would think it would be nearly perfect. The first thing that I learned was never look at a vehicle in the rain, because it looked spotless, but when it was dry after I bought it, I realized that it had nicks and scratches and little dents sort of all over it, which isn't a big deal. It's going to get those things anyway, just sort of from life on the road with me. But that's a good tip, is don't ever look at a van in the rain. The door is weird. So the door, you have to slam really hard to get it to close completely. And if you don't, there's a small gap where you can see light through it, which means it's losing heat or losing cool. The other thing is that the door, when you're driving, is sort of never square. It's sort of always wiggling just a little bit, which is super annoying. And occasionally you'll get a warning on the dashboard that the door is open for a split second. The other sort of quirky things that have gone on with the van that we learned in that first month was sometimes it just doesn't recognize that you've got the key in your pocket or the key in the dashboard. And so I think that is occurring when you don't get into or out of the van from the driver's seat. Just come in the side door, it doesn't know to look for the key, I think. Whereas if you open the driver door, it knows to look for the key. And you can remedy that by simply locking and unlocking the doors. So it took me a little while to figure that out, but that's the solve for that. There were also 2 days where it didn't want to lock any of the back doors, the side door or the back doors. And I'm not really sure what was going on there. I thought it was like a setting that had gotten changed somehow, but I'm not really sure what was going on, but it's not doing it now. So there was the morning that we woke up and the dashboard was in German and it wouldn't let me change it back. And I did a Google search while we went out to eat some breakfast, and discovered that it's some sort of quirk with the 2019 is every once in a while it'll switch to German. It won't allow you to switch it back. They say to turn it off for 20 minutes and wait and come back and it'll be in English. The funny thing is that it didn't change from miles to kilometers. So really I could have driven it, just sort of messages from the vehicle would have been in German. The biggest issue that I'm having with this van right now is at first what I thought was a transmission problem, and then I thought maybe was an unlubricated universal joint. And then I thought for a little bit might have been a turbocharger issue. It is really what I just discovered last night on one of the Sprinter forums is what Sprinter van owners refer to as the 1750 lag. And so what goes on is at around 1750 RPMs, you'll get a very brief pause and then an acceleration. And so I thought it was like transmission slipping, but it didn't really feel like transmission slipping. And it didn't do it all the time. It still doesn't do it all the time. I had the transmission serviced and they were like, yeah, your fluid was dirty, but everything is fine and it's running fine. And it continues to do it. It seems to be some sort of computer issue, or some people think it's an EGR valve issue. It doesn't really affect anything. It's just annoying that in a relatively new van, I've got sort of a lot of people have this issue. So we're going to work on all of those things. We're going to insulate the doors, add the cabinets, all the stuff that I talked about. If you could hit like and subscribe, that would be awesome, and it would help me out tremendously. Other than that, I will see you on the road.